I'm Farhan Dalla, transformational trainer, and welcome to Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast, an invitation to take the journey towards your deepest self. It is my intention to inspire you to connect, move, and meditate. We'll tap in, tune in, and dive in, and together learn and reflect from authentic, real, and transformative conversations. Let's get started.
This is the story of a young teenage boy who would walk the streets of Nairobi on a Sunday afternoon, hoping to find someone with whom he could connect. Someone who would understand the kind of touch he needed and who would allow him to be seen as a lover and not as an abomination, curse, or illness. It is also a story of discovering home, a home that embodies wholeness, love, compassion, dreams, authenticity, vulnerability, fun, creativity, and bravery. My name is Mwachiro. I'm a Kenyan writer, podcaster, journalist, and LGBTQI activist. I am that teenage boy, and I am proudly African.
That was an excerpt from a very African story written by my incredible guest, Kevin Mwachiro. He is someone that I describe as being brave, courageous, humble, talented, impactful with his words, both written and spoken, as you just heard, a trailblazer and a force to be reckoned with on many levels, including the African LGBTQI plus community and probably worldwide. Kevin, welcome to Elevate Your Life.
Thank you so much, Farhan. This is really, really nice to be here. Asante sana, as we say here in Kenya and Kiswahili, or in the region. And thank you so much for your kind words.
Oh, I meant every one of it. And I just want to briefly talk about how we met because it was just recently at the Rainbow Railroad event called the Freedom Party, which is a non-for-profit organization that helps at-risk LGBTQ plus people to get safety worldwide, which is a very, very important cause. It was my first time attending, and I went there with two intentions, not only to support the cause, but I was looking for a potential guest for my podcast. And literally within 10 minutes of being there, I heard about you, and somebody made sure that we were introduced. And I got to say, as soon as I met you, I could tell you had this incredible energy and this presence. I didn't know a lot about you at that time, but I knew that I wanted you on my show. I asked you right away, and you said yes, not knowing a lot about me, but I gave you a bit of background about, the season, being queer voices, and how I wanted to amplify the voice of the queer community, especially for someone like you who's doing incredible work, and you graciously said yes. So thank you. The honor really is mine. Thank you so much.
I didn't know it was your first time at the Freedom Party.
Yes, yes. It was my first time.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, how about for you? Have you attended that event before?
It was my first time. No, it was a first for both. So, I'm a strong believer in the whole serendipity and the universe conspiring. And I think this is one of those times that the universe absolutely conspired
Well,
to bring us together. And for me, it was easy to say yes. Like you also gave good energy for podcasts. I'm a strong believer in helping another podcaster or another human. But if you're a podcaster and I will help you. It's a no-brainer for me. The yeses come easy, and you're amplifying queer voices, and it was something I wanted to do. And thank you for doing this.
oh, you're very welcome. And I also learned when we first met that you're from Kenya. Now, I'm from Tanzania. That's my country of birth. So we're practically neighbors. But when we met, I was under the impression that you actually lived in Canada, but were from Kenya. But you live in Kenya, and we're speaking right now, from we're talking to you while you're in Kenya, which is amazing. So thank you.
That's a pleasure. Like I said, it's a pleasure. And one East African to another.
Exactly. Well, I want to wish you happy Pride Month. And you kicked off Pride Month in Toronto because the party was right at the beginning, kicking off Pride Month. We're at the tail end of Pride Month right now. But how was that experience for you, kicking off Pride Month here? What did you do to honor Pride Month?
Um, Thank you very much. I'd come to Toronto to record a podcast episode for an organization called Journalists for Human Rights. And the name of the podcast, I will try and remember the name of the podcast. I should remember that, but it will come to me.
And it's
It's run by
hosted
the,
by
yeah,
Lisa LaFlemme, right?
yes, yes, someone whom I'd met for the first time. And there was also Tara Michelle Zunick, if I have said her name right. And the title of the podcast was called Queer Voices and Visibility in Hostile Times. And my background's in journalism. I'd met Doug Kerr from the Rainbow Network. We were friends, and he invited me on. And that was it. That was the reason why I was in Canada. And I kicked off Pride Month. That this was on the Tuesday of that week, of the Tuesday, the 3rd of June. But my Pride Month in Toronto kicked off on the previous day when we went for the flag raising ceremony at City Hall, if
Hmm.
that was it. And it was
Yes.
just really to now. I was last in Toronto 2 years ago, and was there for Pride weekend. And this time round, as at the beginning of Pride Month, and to be honest, it was beautiful. And sometimes I think the universe, sort of our queer ancestors, conspire to show me what freedom is like,
Hmm.
and then more so at a time like this. And it felt like that a reminder of the situations that some of us live in parts of the world where our queer expression, our queer identities are not as free, that an opportunity to taste a little slice of queer heaven, of what normal looks like. So for
Hmm.
me, it was kind of emotional. I take these things really to heart, and just taking in the people around me. You could tell the other refugees or people from different nationalities, but also an acknowledgement of the month. I love being in Canada because you acknowledge the First Nations. It is very grounding to recognize the land within which you stand from. And I wish more countries could recognize that you are all settlers and you have been offered home. And I think for me, even in this journey, and I'm sure we'll touch on this, that's how healing and freedom comes.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting to hear that proclamation and acclamation of First Nations, of other identities that have made Canada home. And it felt wholesome, to be honest. It was a
Hmm.
beautiful and wholesome way to start off Pride Month.
Yes, and you touched on the various different climates that LGBTQ plus community face around the world, and it can be very different from Canada. And one thing you say in that same post, excuse me, that you started off reading in, is that my Africa is a place of immense beauty, but it can also be dangerous for those who dare to be themselves. I chose to live my truth after being almost forced out of the closet in 2001 after I got kissing a guy. Kevin, for those that don't know, what are the laws regarding the LGBTQI in Kenya, and how did that impact your coming out?
On the legal side, there is a law that outlaws homosexual acts or sex between men, especially sodomy. It's an old British colonial law that's still within our statute. And for many years, there was the perception that homosexuality was illegal, and I think we all grew up in that environment. But when when I sort of found my way and acknowledged who I am, I realized that I'm not breaking any law, even proclaiming my sexuality, you know. But in this environment, there's family ties, cultural ties are really strong, as you would know from your past, from your lineage.
Hmm.
Um, and even religious ties, and religious ties, religion plays a big role here in Kenya. And that comes with baggage that is unwritten, that is internal, where there's shame and no one is there to explain who you are, to validate who you are. So when you do realize who you are, it comes with shame. It comes with shame, and you carry that shame with you as you navigate your sexuality, as you navigate your identity. So for me, by the time I I got to come out in 2001, I and I was a born again Christian, to use that term, I had suppressed any form of feeling that I had. As a church boy, any feelings like this were the work of the devil, so to speak.
Mm.
I struggled with my homosexuality. I lived a double life, being a Christian and coming to grips with my queerness. But one of the things I'm so proud of is that I never judged queer people because I envied them, even from the pulpit or from my Christian cocoon. I envied them because I'm like, that is who I am and that is the life I want to live, you know? And it was hard, to be honest, just growing up that way. It was hard, you know. There was a lot of self-hate. There was a lot of loneliness and sadness. And I look back at my teenage years to most of my 20s. I never used to smile, Farhan. I
Mm.
never used to smile because I thought my smile was too feminine. Any of my attributes, I sort of hid from that. When I looked at pictures from my time at university, I was like, oh my God, I looked like a miserable child because I people didn't smile. And I was like, no, and I don't think I was really, really happy because I had this secret within me. And then there's no one around you. To use a phrase, for the longest, I thought I was the only gay in the village. This thing that I had was a foreign thing, and it didn't help. Like I said earlier on, being in the church and navigating it that space that way with no one to hold your hand. It was tough. When I look back, I say it was tough. But when I was kind of when I got to terms with who I am, there was a freedom that my heart is normal. What I feel, and there's an acceptance of the normality. I'm like, no one's taught me this. These are feelings I've always had. I may not be able to exercise that freely or even tell other people. But the joy, I remember the joy it brought, that I'm like, I am as normal as my friends. And the fact that my heart could skip at seeing another gentleman, another guy. And it happened with another colleague who it was rumored to be gay. And I really liked him. And I just found myself feeling things that I had never felt before and wanting to offer service and kindness and affection to this other human being was liberating,
And
was
how
really
old
a
were you at
joyful.
this point, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I was a late bloomer, to be honest. I think I was
Hmm.
around 28. I was
28.
27, 28, you know.
Did
And
you
and
know
having
any queer
having
people, like in high
I knew
school or?
a few of them.
Hmm.
No, to be honest, no. I was in a boys' school, a private boys' school, and there was, if people were called, forgive me for using the word, there were derogatory terms that we use against boys who were effeminate or were seen in a kind of way,
Hmm.
you know. So you wouldn't want to be associated with those individuals. And I remember there was in my neighborhood, there's a guy who had a sachet when he used to walk, and I would be scared of him, and I used to feel sorry for him because I'm like that guy's, and people would say he was gay, but we didn't know. It's just that the way he walked, we assumed he was gay. And I'm like, I wouldn't want to be him, but he was himself. I look back and there's admiration. And I will admit that the first time I did act out my sexual feelings, I was 16. So when that happened, I suppressed that for until I was 28. I had the word asexual. I didn't quite understand what it was, and I thought that was me. My feelings were dead. In hindsight, I had just suppressed what I was feeling and
Hmm.
hid that from everybody, myself included.
Right. And because that incident where you were caught kissing a guy, it didn't exactly, you said you were forced to come out. This whole experience didn't come out or turn out on your own terms. So what was that like?
I had to face myself, to be honest. I had to, the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror.
Hmm.
That is a really powerful song. You had to sort of look at yourself and say, but this is who you are. And also the realization that I enjoyed what I was doing.
Hmm.
I enjoyed kissing this man. My body felt alive. And I'd never had any girlfriends or had any relations with anyone until this, through my adult life until this point. But I had to say this is who I am, and the fact that other people saw what happened between me and this other gentleman, figured the secrets out of the bag. People will talk. Other people outside of me, and
Hmm.
these are work colleagues. A work colleague found me and this gentleman kissing in the car, and I knew it was going to spread.
Right.
I knew it was going to spread. And at that point in time, I'm like, it is what it is. If they talk, they talk.
Hmm.
And I had to accept myself for who I am. And I'd say that for me was like, okay, I am a homosexual. I am gay. And this is who I am. But I'm a Christian. I don't know how I'm going to navigate that space, but I am gay. It was an admission of that.
I always say that if possible, before you come out, it's important to find your tribe, know where your safe spaces are. In that moment, you didn't have that. So, were you able to find your safe spaces after you came out? And what do safe spaces in Kenya look like?
To be honest, there were no safe spaces. I
Mhm.
wanted to leave the country. I wanted to leave the country because I didn't know of other individuals like me. And I mean, there's this guy who I liked, but I'm like, I can't be with him because I'm a Christian. I am a gay. I recognize that, but I didn't even want to explore the fact that there might be safe spaces within Nairobi because I still had that baggage of Christianity that I would be sinning. So I didn't, to be honest, from then on, I just really wanted to leave Kenya. I
Mhm.
didn't want to be in Kenya because it was getting hard. So I didn't look for safe spaces. My safety was going to be found outside of Kenya, outside of these individuals who I had feelings for. I figured if I go, I went to work for a period in Uganda, and I figured maybe the feelings will go away while I'm in Uganda. Eventually ended up in the UK for my master's, and this was around 2002, only in hindsight to realize I moved from the fire into the frying pan,
Mhm.
and that is where I think the church at one time was a safe space, and I came out clean to those who knew within the church. But also, the safe space started being my friends who just loved on me the way I was. And these friends were queer or were allies. And we would go to the nightclub and just seeing myself being in that environment of queerness and was safety to some point, but it also made me live a very shadowy life at that time.
Mhm.
So those safe spaces, I think, only became apparent when I came out to myself and actively started seeking out community and declaring to the world that I am a gay person. And that only happened when I came back to Kenya in 2006 and actively seeking out members of the community, actively creating a profile for myself. There was a website called Gaydar, and then logging onto Gaydar and saying, I'm going to identify with this folk. And then realizing in Nairobi, there were 300 profiles. I'm like, wow, so I'm not alone, and then
Mhm.
going to there's a gay friendly pub in an area called Westlands called Gypsies that I'd heard of many years before, and I was too scared to go to, and making a concerted effort of going to Gypsies, and then realizing meeting other people there, and then getting invited to that time the movement was very nascent. Well, not nascent, was very novice, and just being invited to meetings and showing up, and I think that's how I found myself as an activist, an accidental activist, because I found safe spaces with other Kenyans who are living in Kenya who are queer. Forgive me if I get emotional along the way, because Farhan, it was my queerness had only existed through white eyes, through the
Right.
British eyes. It had never existed through African eyes. That Kenya, to some extent, and finding my expression as a queer man in Kenya was my safe space. I've never thought about it, but just in the one place that you figure you can't be, it's the
Mm.
one place that I could be. That's when my safe space came many years on at the grand old age of 33.
Yeah. Yeah. I think many who are listening can relate to your journey. Um, and you say early on in this conversation that you always knew that you were attracted to other guys and you acted on those feelings when you were 16. And in your post that you just beautifully wrote, and if I can quote another quote from it again, is that that moment of freedom and pleasure was immediately followed by shame and guilt and hiding for over a decade. It was a struggle with self-hate, masturbation, and low self-esteem. Post 2001, I was forced to look at myself in the mirror and finally admit that I was gay. Kevin, how did you transition from the shame and the guilt to what you describe as the joy and liberation for saying the words, I'm gay? Because I think a lot of people would be interested in learning about getting to that place who may think, I'll never get there. It's impossible for whatever reason.
Farhad, I love your questions, man. Be honest, you are forcing me to. You're not forcing me. You're making me go deep and to reflect on my own journey. So thank you for that. It's, I think it's the same. That Christianity that sort of saw me through those periods of my years, the same one where I recognized there's a phrases or just lessons that you learn about how we as human beings are beautifully and wonderfully made.
Mm,
A recognition of the fact that if there is a God or Allah or whoever, this higher being, and they made everything under the earth, then I'm also part of that everything,
mhm,
and people forget that that even that some I think in this part of the world some people sort of make us queers have superpowers and like you're making your God seem so small that our queerness was created by something outside of God, because they're like, this is not of him. And I'm like, but who are we to question that they are incapable of making us queer and in their image. So for me it was that where I'm like, I am beautiful.
mm,
I am made in the image of God, and even though I am queer. And I remember a period in my life when I was really struggling with my Christianity and sexuality. I was in my university town called Bournemouth in the south of England, and sitting by the shore, and it was one of those times I'm like, this life is too difficult, and I thought about it. I need to just kill myself because this is hard. This is really hard. And then a voice told me, but that is all? Because you're queer, you want to end all the things that are planned for you because of your sexuality? It's almost like I was being told, pick something bigger to die for, to take your life for. Pick something bigger because this is too minuscule for you to contemplate suicide. That changed for me, to be honest. I
mm,
realized that this thing is not a bad thing. I
mhm,
did go to therapy, and it was a lot of therapy, to be honest, where I remember going into the therapist office and telling her, fix me. I'm tired of being gay. I'm tired. Fix me, make me straight. And then, and I did sessions with therapists in the UK and therapists in Kenya who validated me and said, "But there's nothing wrong with you.
mm,
All you are is gay, and there's nothing wrong with that." So it took a process for me to just say, but to start accepting myself, to the process of loving ourselves takes so long, and for loving everything. And I'm like, but these are good feelings. How are these bad feelings? And why have I believed that loving another man, want to touch another man or want to be touched by another man, how is that a bad thing? And then, I mean, I just had drinks with a friend of mine the other day, and I remember telling him that I so love being gay. I'm so proud of who I am as a gay man. And he's like, he wishes he has that. He's one of my oldest friends. He's open to those who know. He's like he wishes he has that because there are times that he wishes he wasn't. Those times are few and far between. But I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I'm like, but this is who I was made to be.
mhm,
And the process of loving myself has taken a while. I'd say that my late 40s was when it happened, where I'm like, I love all of me with the good and the bad. I love all of me, and the good and the bad is not has nothing to do with sexuality, but I'm beginning with that whole process of loving yourself and falling in love with myself. It's fairly recent for me, and loving me in my entirety is a beautiful thing. And it has taken a journey. And for everyone who is struggling with that, I'm like, fam, it takes a while. There are more layers. And I still know, even at this age, I still know there are aspects of me that still need to be unearthed, that still need to be discovered, that still need to be discarded, that still need to grow, that still need to blossom, that still need to thrive, that I still also still need to grieve and forgive.
Hmm.
This is a journey, but I'm in a place, but I am in a beautiful garden with beautiful, beautiful other people. And I'm so grateful to be in that garden.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful to share this moment and this experience with you. Um, I will offer to share a bit of um, not advice, but something some people could do if they're in this place where they're not quite where you are, Kevin. And that is to just sit with yourself, breathe in deep the spirit of the light, and say those words that you just said, Kevin. I love myself. And then whatever it is that you're struggling with, whether it's your sexual identity, an illness, pain, whatever, and say to that with the words, I love you too. I'm grateful for you, but God has this. And then surrender. And then just let go. Rather than stay in the place of resistance, surrender to it and just allow the light to come through and illuminate what the gift and the treasure is in whatever the struggle is, because there is one. And when you're in it, it's hard to see it. But when you let go, you may be surprised at what's on the other side of it. So I'll leave that with you. Kevin, you say in your post, after you said the words, I'm gay, and for the next few years, I straddled the fence torn between desire and dogma. That period was confusing, exciting, lonely, and precarious. I say precarious because it involved having sex in risky places and with total strangers, and at times the oddest time of the day. I mean, you kind of touched upon it, but I was wondering if you could elaborate how this experience, excuse me, shaped your life and how you were able to come into your wholeness, including and especially that you're queer.
Period, just hearing you say those words is and that young Kevin was brave, sometimes foolhardy, you know,
Hmm.
but also just it makes me it's made me empathetic to people who are in that situation because I was there, operating in shadows and in secret. So that when I do hear of people who like down low brothers or people who are still in the closet and take on risky encounters, it's made me less judgmental, and I'm like, just be safe,
Hmm.
be safe. Fortunately now there are places that people can convene, but that is all internal. That's the thing someone needs to tell themselves. It's made me less judgmental because I'm like, I know what it is like to have fear and love and lust all in the body at the same time.
Hmm.
To lose your bonkers. You're like, I want this thing so bad that I'm just gonna take risks. Sometimes very uncalculated risks. You know, for me, I think yeah, it's offered grace for anyone who's in that situation. I'm like, I wish you could get out of. So it's made me a more graceful person, you know, which is why for me, I think I'm beginning to share. I'm not ashamed about sharing that I had sex in risky places because there are people who I know will come across my posts and are going through the exact same thing.
Hmm.
And if you want it so bad, you could stop work, or leave your house and go to a place that you never find yourself in, because it's like, they say forbidden fruit is the sweetest, you know? And sometimes we are human beings. We are men, and we are human beings rather, not just men. But we are individuals where our body takes the better of us. We think with our, as men, we think with our other head, and that takes over us. And I was there. I was there. So for me, it's yeah, like I said, it's made me more gracious, empathetic, less judgmental, and just makes my work a lot more important and makes my storytelling a lot more important in sharing my authenticity and not being ashamed of saying, yes, I had sex. I will admit here, I used to cottage a lot. I used to go cruising a lot, because those were the spaces. I mean, if anyone doesn't know what cottaging is, it was having sex in toilets, in public toilets,
That's called
or cruising
cottaging.
in
Okay.
forests. Yeah, cruising in forests or areas that, people in sand dunes on a secluded beach, and this is the space other men would find, and we're all there just taking risks, or sometimes just the adventure of having anonymous sex in an open space,
Hmm.
you know? And for me, it was doing it that way at the train station in London, knowing this particular train station, or being an exhibitionist, or being a voyeur, and then going and catching the train, and or catching the bus and going to church the following morning. You know, it was that. And because I know there are people who do that, especially in even countries like in Kenya, where people don't have avenues to freely express their sexual desires.
Mm.
I just want to show people you're not alone in going through what you are going through. And there are spaces of safety to meet other men, because we can create other spaces of safety, even if it's for a random sexual encounter, or even to take ownership of your own sexual encounter. Let's be open with one another. Tell someone else, this is the person I'm meeting. This is the, and we're trying to encourage people to do that more, at least with my circle of friends, for our own safety.
Mm.
You know?
That's
Yeah.
important.
So yeah,
Yes. No matter what
yeah.
country you're
So
in, that's really important.
yeah, and I think it takes away the shame of having, oh, this is someone I don't know, but we clicked and we can just have a hookup.
Hmm.
It takes the shame away from that.
That's the key point, right? It's the shame aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me, Kevin, you kind of described queer life around the time when you were coming out, but what does queer life in Kenya look like? And you described Toronto so beautifully from your experience, and it is a place of liberation. There is no laws, restrictions on how you can live your life, who you can marry. But would you mind talking about what queer life looks like in Kenya today?
It's it's exciting and scary at the same time. It's it's joy and pain at the same time. It's flying the flag and hiding the flag at the same time. It's sashaying and manning up. It is learning to navigate through all sorts of spaces. Um, it is so dynamic, to be honest. It is so dynamic, and for me, it is beautiful because I'm seeing how younger generations, mostly the Gen Zs, who are creating spaces for themselves virtually, who are being bolder in their expression, even on the streets of Nairobi. Um, And then on the flip side, it is people my age, my generation, who are struggling with loneliness, because, like, where are the older gay, where are the seniors meeting, where are they converging? So it's dealing with that, with people spending a lot of time by themselves. But in some cases, I understand there's a phrase I heard at a meeting, people are going back into the closet,
Mm.
because they're in societies. As they get older, the people who are within their circles might not be as free thinkers or as liberated. So they're finding space in churches and just sort of like closeting themselves again.
Hmm.
You hear stories like that. There isn't one. It is easier because there's a lot more community now, to be honest. There's a lot
Okay.
more knowledge. There are spaces. The movement has grown. Kenya has 47 counties. Um, I can say there is a movement or a community right across the country. It is easier in some communities of the country than in others. It's not just a Nairobi, the capital thing anymore.
Hmm.
It's in the other, it's there are scenes in smaller cities, smaller towns where there is a community member, or you just need to find out the queer friendly spaces. There are a lot of queer friendly spaces that exist. And there are also a number of hidden spaces that we are creating for ourselves. It's people's homes that offer places of safety. Um, it's finding chosen family in a way that works for you. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, where no one recognizes, but they're like, look at all of us. We're doing this together. For me, as a writer, podcaster, as a creative, the creative space has been a refuge for so many of us,
Hmm.
for freedom of expression. It is bravery, it is daring, it is adventurous. It is harder for individuals who are, for especially females or lesbians who are masculine presenting, or trans women, or or people who don't conform. For people who pass, it is easier. It is all those things, to be
Hmm.
honest. And Kenya, because of the capital Nairobi and having the headquarters of a number of UN agencies, is very cosmopolitan. And then for some people, it is very surprising that they come to Kenya and they realize there's a community that they can fall back on
Hmm.
and learn to be chameleons, and and learn how to navigate what it is to be a queer in Kenya.
Hmm.
So it involves a lot of malleability, if I can say that. It's
Yeah.
malleability, smarts, and also trying to protect your joy, queer
Hmm.
joy.
Right.
Being involved in the movement, we are calling those moments to, like, we're not constantly going to be victims. We're going to celebrate ourselves. We're going to seek and create moments of queer joy. So it's deliberate moves to make sure there are spaces and opportunities for queer joy. It is all that in a bag of chips.
I love that queer joy. Um, but you mentioned that it was scary. So what is it about it that's still scary? Do you live in fear?
The scary is that you don't have the law to protect you.
Right.
You don't have, sometimes you may not have society to protect you. You may not have people or family around to shelter you.
Hmm.
It's scary because sometimes you have to go through this journey alone. It is scary because some people think that they have the right to police our bodies on how we feel. It is scary because, you know, you probably there is the potential of violence.
Hmm.
It is scary because there is the potential of discrimination just because what someone may have heard. I had a friend who lost a job because the word got out that he was gay, and he was a teacher, and he lost a job that he really loved.
Hmm.
And his experience as a teacher and what he brings to the kids has nothing to do with his sexuality.
Right.
It's you going into some cases a public health facility where a health provider will refuse to treat you because you're queer, where people bring up their faith more so first over their professional, ethos that require them to treat everyone. It is that. 2 years ago, it was kind of difficult for us. There's a lot of anti-LGBTQ sentiment in the country. It was me being living in a small town. Like, can I safely go into the market? And it was the first time in my life I felt scared for myself, and I felt unsafe. Can I navigate spaces that I prior to this period in 2020? So prior to this period in 2023, forgive me, I would have walked in comfortably, and I had to rethink how am I presenting myself
Hmm.
to now where I'm like, you know what? If I write a piece in the papers, I am I am Kevin Mwachiro. I'm openly gay.
Hmm.
I think it is I there are moments of that, but I keep on telling people, once you overcome the fear, freedom comes trotting by so quickly.
Thank you for
And
sharing
there's a
that.
power in that.
Yes. Oh, I so appreciate you. Um, and it reminds me again that we're not free until we're all free. And when I
Absolutely.
go to, Pride, or, when I attended Pride weekend, just know that I remember all those that don't have the liberty to celebrate Pride like I do, and recognize that it's still a form of a movement, and even, you know, just as much today as it was when it first started, because not everyone is liberated to live their life and is protected by law. And so I will continue to represent in our country. It is a party, but it is also a reminder of why we are celebrating, and to honor and to hold space for those that cannot. So you will always be with me in my heart at every Pride March, every Pride celebration, and all those that are facing those struggles in that part of the world that they're in. I will always honor you. And despite what you describe as the scariness, um, you wrote this book of stories called um, Stories from Kenya. Sorry, it's called Invisible Stories from Kenya. And it honors the queer community, which was the first of its kind. You also co founded the Out Film Festival, which is East Africa's first LGBTQI film festival. These are huge steps, Kevin. So, this is why I introduced you as a trailblazer. Why was this important to you? And how did you manage to accomplish all this given the environment that you're in?
Thank you very much for that, Farhan. I think for me, it was once you overcome the fear, the sky's the limit. And then when you sort of know the law and you're like, but we're not breaking any law by doing this. We're not breaking any law by creating spaces to celebrate queer film. We're not, well, I mean, yeah, let us create spaces for ourselves. It was scary. It was scary.
Hmm.
Especially I remember the first film festival, it was in 2011. We got a house full. And I'm like, wow, we never thought we'd get a house full. And an auditorium of, like, let's say 200 people. There were people standing. It was like we got a house full. And it was like, we did this without any interruption. And it was public. Let's do it again. You do it once, you're like, let's do it again.
Hmm.
You know? And then the opportunity to write the book came from that. I think for me, it was that point where, I think for me, rather, it was a point where I'm like, I'm not breaking any law. I'm not breaking any law. And at that, and I think the excitement of just doing that or creating something new or birthing something
Hmm.
was a lot more rewarding than the fear. And I think for me, when I remember being in 2011, introducing the Out Film Festival publicly to everyone in the auditorium, it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time I'm saying this publicly. Okay, the cat's out of the bag. Let's move. Let's move. Let the show begin. Enjoy. It was like it was a quick transition for me.
Hmm.
And when the book came out, it was covered by the press extensively. I was on page three of the largest selling newspaper country. And you're like, the thing that drives me in being in that position was like, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. And I know I'm not doing this for myself. It is for others to see themselves, to hear themselves. I'm not doing this on my own.
Hmm.
I'm not doing this for me. That was it. And I'm like, the feedback, the validation, the affirmation that you get from other people is a huge reward. It just affirms everything that I'm doing. Like I said, it drives out the fear. And you're like, and it's still like that today. It brings me so much joy creating spaces for queer folk who create platforms like this and what you're doing. It's just that so that other people know that there is a family out there, that you aren't alone. And I remember in 2007, Kenya hosted the World Social Forum. It's a huge global meeting for activists. And we hosted that for the first time, and we were given a tent. It was called the Q Spot, and there was coverage by the local media. And I remember someone coming from a tiny little town and he said, I saw this on TV and I wanted to see other people like me. That drives me. Said that that young man, I said that that young man was able to find community. And like I said, when I was growing up, I thought I was the only gay in the village.
Hmm.
You know, for me, it is important to make sure that other members of our family, our chosen family, wherever that they are, is Kenya specific, Africa specific, or of African or global South heritage, that they are not alone. That they are not alone. There is family, and there are many of us who have trodden this path before.
And you've opened the doors for so many people. I commend you. I am in awe of you. Um, and you worked, as you said, as a journalist for the BBC. Did you cover any stories about the LGBTQI plus community that impacted your activism when you went back to Kenya?
Yes, yes. That period, 2007, my colleague and I were assigned to cover the World Social Forum. And it was for the first time that when I did that piece, it was a radio piece. When I did it, the producers in London were really happy that there was a nuanced approach at looking at queerness coming out of the region, because they were like everything is bad news. And I realized that is the power and the opportunity that had been given. I'd been given that platform, a huge continental platform, to talk about LGBTQ stories. And that, I think, for me was my beginning of my activism, where I realized I'm in the media, I am my name is in the spotlight, and this is a tool that I can use to change the narrative, to illuminate the lives of LGBTQ people within Kenya, within the region. And I wanted to cover, and what had happened previously, the stories did not dignify our persons. Local media would, if it was an issue of homosexuality, they'd go and look for male sex workers. And we're like, but that's not me. It was effeminate male sex workers, and that was them, the picture of homosexuality. I'm like, but that's not me.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Um, and I wanted to provide an opportunity for people to look at us differently. And I wanted a platform for the movement to be heard. And it
Hmm.
was not just in English, but also creating an opportunity with the Kiswahili service, which was running out of Nairobi as well. If they needed to talk about LGBTQ issues, I'm like, I can get you someone to come and speak about this from the community. So I'm glad I opened opportunities for members of the community to be heard in Kiswahili and in English. It wasn't me, but there was a platform for activists from the community to be heard. So I'm really grateful that I got that. What a story I covered the first time the anti-homosexuality law was in Uganda. This was in 2011, when the Anti-Homosexuality Act was first enacted. I covered a story for one of the programs in London, in Uganda. It was a difficult but also very rewarding story to do, because I mean the people I was interviewing didn't know about me. One of the detractors, or one of the people who was spearheading the campaign, I remember interviewing them, and I remember asking him, "What would you do if you ever came across a homosexual?" He's like, "Oh, I would punch them, I'd beat them." And in my head, I'm like, "The joke's on you, because the person sitting right is a homosexual." And I'm like, "Fam, you don't know how we look." And then on the flip side, going to a high density informal settlement, meeting a community living in a shack and celebrating their queerness as Ugandans, in spite of the shadow of this law. So it brought me such joy. And then meeting them at this gay friendly place later on, they're like, "Oh, you're one of us." I'm like, "Yes, I had to work, but I knew this was where I was going to be, just to show you I am with you. And
Hmm.
I am your tool. I am your web, not, I am your tool. I am a platform that is going to make sure that the coverage, at least from the BBC, or on issues covering LGBTQ matters, will be fair, will be
Hmm.
just, and will be with dignity." I'm really proud that I was able to do that. I'm really grateful for that opportunity. And I'm still doing that with all the various pieces of work that I'm doing. Just make sure that we are covered with fairness, with justice, with dignity and respect.
Hmm. Amazing. Kevin, you describe yourself as a custodian of people's stories, and you are an incredible storyteller, whether it's in written form or in audio. It's another thing that we have in common in that we both love storytelling. And I've listened to your podcast titled Nipe, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what does Nipe mean, and where does your love for storytelling come from?
Yes, thank you for that once again. The podcast is called Nipe Story. It started, I think, in December 2017. And my love for storytelling, especially oral storytelling, started when I was a child. There used to be, back then, there was, before the internet, before FM radio stations, there was the state broadcaster, I think it was called VOK or KBC back then. And they had a kids program called Story Time. It used to come on twice a week. And I used to listen to story time sometimes in my dad's car, because there was no access to, I mean, people were in the house and there was no radio, and I wanted to listen to this in private. And her name was
Mhm.
Mami Nosi. And I remember listening to Mami Nosi, and I loved the way she would tell her stories and transform us to take us to different parts of the continent or the country with her storytelling. I fell in love with radio at a very early age. I used to sit, I had a radio, those boom boxes. I had one in my room. And I used to remember tuning into shortwave and traveling the world by listening to Radio China, VOA, Voice of America, the BBC, German. I just loved hearing just different voices through radio. And then stumbling across, landing, I ended up working with the BBC. I loved audio storytelling. I studied radio production at university for my postgraduate. And this, I just realized words, and my supervisors used to say the pictures that we create in people's minds are a lot more powerful than what they actually see.
Mm.
And I realized I do love creating pictures in people's minds, and through audio and also through the written word. And that was where my love for it. And even as a journalist, you're interviewing people right across the breadth. And I'm like, these are your stories. I'm just a custodian. And it was my role, regardless of the story, to make sure that I was fair journalist, as an objective journalist, as I was truthful in making sure that, some people don't trust the media. And I didn't want people to say, no, I misreported them. So I tell people I'm a custodian of people's stories. I became the journalist that I am because of the fact that people trusted me with their stories, and I carry that on with me. So that seeded my love for storytelling. And with Nipe Story, it was an opportunity to share. I love African literature, and I love, like you, the spoken word. And I love audio editing. And this was an opportunity for all of that to come into one mixing bowl, so to
Mm.
speak. And I realized along the way, it's not just storytelling. And I figured I have to also create an opportunity for queer stories. There was a lot of queer fiction happening, coming out from the continent at this time. And I figured this also has to be a platform for queer storytelling. So Nipe Story I call it a library of stories, audio stories, from as many of from the length and breadth of Africa in the best way that I could, but it's also an opportunity for us to imagine what queer love is from a fictional point of view. So yeah, and they fuel me, to be honest. I get fueled just listening to stories. I love listening to stories. I love listening to people's stories. And they
Mhm.
do fuel me, they pour into me.
Yeah, and I can feel your passion for it even now as you talk about it. Um, I don't know if you know, but I'm also a physiotherapist, and I've been a therapist for over 20 years. And recently I was kind of reflecting on why do I love my job so much? And there has always been for me a love for helping people. There's always been a love for me on the healing process and what the body can do. I'm always fascinated with the healing journey. It's so rewarding to help people with their pain and restore their function. But it's grown deeper for me in that one of the key reasons why I believe I love my job today is because I love hearing people's stories. And I get inquisitive when I'm meeting each patient, but for many reasons, not just because I'm curious, but also because when I'm putting together a treatment plan, I want to devise it in a way in which it doesn't disrupt their life too much, but augment it. And when you're getting people to change habits, introduce new lifestyle patterns, whether it's therapeutic exercise, breath work, whatever it may be, it can be very challenging and difficult for them. So I really try to get to understand, my patients' functions, how they live, their family and lifestyle. And one patient really comes to mind when we talk about people's stories. And this particular woman, she came to Canada 7 years ago as an asylum seeker from Somalia. And during one of our sessions, she told me that she has 10 children. She's a single mother,
Wow.
and she hasn't seen her children since she left. So she's been separated from her children for 7 years, and her youngest was about four to
Wow.
5 months old when she left. And
Wow.
so as I'm listening to her and talking to her and getting to know her, I noticed that every time she comes for treatment, she has henna or mendi on her hands. And I thought, okay, it wasn't because it was Eid or any type of holiday or celebration. Um, so I asked her, I said, why, like, are you celebrating something? Why do you have mendi or henna on your hands? And she had it every time she came. She goes, I just love it. And I thought, wow, you know, I I couldn't stop thinking about her story and this mendi, and I thought, even in the situation that she's in, the separation from her family and her children, she's found a way to express and see beauty through the art
Mhm.
of putting Mendi on her hand. And that was maybe, a relief from the pain of separation. I don't know. But she never came in with a sad face. She always had Mendi on her hand. I'd give her her treatment. I'd hear her talk and she'd be on her way. And I thought, wow, like, I just can't even put into words. But I guess my question for you is, are your stories a way in which to express and share the beauty of life, your life, and maybe about Kenya as well?
Yeah. Yes, yes, I've never thought about it that way. Yes, yes, it is. It's my love for the continent. It's sharing stories from the continent, not just Kenya. It's sometimes I feel that Africa is so often misreported,
Hmm.
and that misreporting also affects us and how we view ourselves as Africans. I've been fortunate enough to travel at least to over 20 countries on the continent, and my goal is to travel hopefully to every country on the continent. And sometimes we don't know much about each other. So all my work, I'm really grateful, has taken on a Pan-African lens. And even when I do travel, I love posting my pictures just so that people can see this. There's another side to this continent. There's another side to the world. And I think for me, it's just that celebration of our diversity. Earlier on, I used that analogy of a garden. And I think that's how I look at the world. We're all
Hmm.
part of this beautiful, beautiful garden. And the more we get to know about each other, the more I think the more empathetic I think will be, the more gracious will be, the fact that hopefully less hatred, but even more understanding and respect for one another.
Hmm.
And who doesn't love a good story, my friend?
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a good story? And I think stories help us connect.
Hmm.
And I think as storytellers, this is a gift that we have. We have been given a gift. And
Hmm.
if we can use that to bring cultures together, to bring individuals together, to create spaces for individuals to see themselves or hear themselves and to acknowledge themselves, that is beautiful. I think stories have a power to do that.
Hmm.
Stories are powerful, powerful tools. And for me, I mean, that's why I think I really struggled with being a journalist at one time. Like, I just can't be. being in the newsroom every day when I'm just reporting bad news. It's changed how I look at my journalism. It's changed at how at the kind of coverage I I offer from the continent when it comes to covering LGBTQ stories. It's me telling people about queer joy, that queer joy does exist in spite of repressive laws, in spite of hostile environments, that we, like that lady that you've just shared, we'll still look for opportunities to wave the flag, put Mendy or henna on ourselves, because I say it shines and rains on all of us. It shines and rains on all of us. And there are moments that sunshine does come through. And
Hmm.
those are moments to be appreciated and celebrated.
Yes. And you mentioned your posts on social media. I've taken a look through some of your travels and your experiences, and it really got me thinking, I have a criteria when I post something that I set for myself, excuse me, and that is before I post something, I ask myself, is this something that will inspire, uplift, motivate, or in some way tell my story? And also share my legacy, because it is, every post I leave or post, sorry, is something that I consider as part of my legacy. And my question to you is, what are your thoughts when you make a post? Do you have an intention before you post a picture or share a part of your life with the world on Instagram or whatever social media platform you use?
Um, I mean, pretty much very similar to what you said. For me, it's also that fact that I'm still here.
Hmm.
I'm living life. I'm living life. My friends say I live life with a big, I eat life with a big spoon, and I'm eating it with a big spoon.
Yeah.
There's an element of gratitude. I know there are people who may not have the opportunities to travel as much as I do. So a friend of mine's like, he loves my post because he says he can live vicariously through me. So sometimes it's not about me, it's just showing people there's another side to this beautiful, beautiful world that we live in. It's not always sadness.
Hmm.
Um, on Facebook, it's a question of just sharing stories that 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 will help people think, or look at the world differently, or highlight causes that are important to me. Instagrams, I will be honest, sometimes can be gratuitous. There's a little bit of vanity in there sometimes with some of the posts, but it's
It
also a
is
way of me just
Instagram,
also,
so yeah, I get
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, just
Right.
affirming myself that I have come a long way. I can post a picture of myself in speedos, and in a because once upon a time I didn't love my body.
Mm.
Once upon a time I didn't love pictures of me, and now I can. And sometimes it's a reminder to me saying, this is who you are, Kev.
Hmm.
You can, and you are beautiful. And sharing that my beauty with the world as well. It's also that, and just hopefully some people, and also just being very wholesome in
Hmm.
what I do. Sometimes an element of education, I highlighting stuff from the continent, the good news, the somber news, but just trying to create a balance, showing that phrase that I learned recently is that we only have this life. We only have this life. And
Hmm.
I've battled 10 years ago, I got I hope I'm not jumping the gun. 10 years ago, I got diagnosed with a blood cancer called multiple myeloma. And I think from then on, my posts are a celebration of this life. Every day is a gift.
Mm.
Every day is a gift. And I'm so, so grateful for that. And I'm going to live this life. I'm going to live this gift that I've been given to. And sometimes that does come across in my posts. I like that to come across through my posts.
Mm. Well, Kevin, thank you for sharing that. And that is a journey I can somewhat understand and relate to. Is that my father had multiple myeloma as well, and
Oh,
so we will all keep you in our prayers on a daily basis, and may you continue to thrive in your life always, and live the life that you're living with such incredible purpose and integrity. We both are in our 50s now, and I was wondering, how has your view and perspective of living a queer life changed since you first came out?
It's a really good question. Mm.
Because I feel it's something that ever evolves, right?
It does, yeah, it does. It
Yeah.
does evolve, and the evolution of the queer person I am now. I love this person. I love the fact that I've made peace with my feminine, and I tell people my masculine and feminine sit so comfortably side by side now, and I honor that side to me.
Mm.
I love the freedom that it gives me. Um, a friend of mine who came out also late in life is like he doesn't have to keep track of the lies once he came out, and it's that you don't have to. There's no more lying. This is me. This is the full package, and I'm really grateful for that. And that this thing that we have is beautiful, man.
Hmm.
This thing that we have is beautiful, and I am enough. That's a phrase that I use as well. I am enough. I am enough. I'm more than enough.
You are more than enough.
And
Yeah,
and
that's what I
I
was
and I
just gonna
and I
say.
know yeah, and I have people. I mean, the fact that you and I met just over a week ago, and now we're here sharing aspects of each other's lives,
Hmm.
is the fact that I keep on saying our queer ancestors are telling us we've got you. You guys have got this, and this family here in Toronto, in Delhi, in Kuala Lumpur, in Berlin, in South America, and in Quito, in Ecuador, that we are family. Our queerness is beautiful and is diverse and is part and parcel of every day.
Hmm.
That we are enough. That we are beautiful. But like you said, our work is not done until we are all free.
That's right.
Our work is not, and always to remember that, and even if it's just one person, to make sure that they are able to love themselves, accept themselves a little bit more, it makes this journey all the more worth it. And my representation being openly gay as a Kenyan man is that to show people it is possible, that you're not alone. I still remember that boy who thought he was alone, the younger me who thought he was the only gay in the village. Tell people that there are so many of us living our lives in the best way that we can, and
Mm.
that they have the power to do that as well.
Mm. I love that. Kevin, we are near the end of Pride Month now, and I was wondering, what does pride mean to you today?
Man, I don't know why that question's really got into me, Farhan.
Mm.
Freedom. It's freedom and joy.
Hmm.
But it's not just it's celebration, but I think it's also for me a reminder that when we're not free until all of us are free. It's not just in the glamour of it all, but I think sometimes we forget with the floats and the celebration that not everyone can do that. Not everyone can do that. And that is, like you said, you're gonna march for me, you're gonna celebrate for me. Please do that. Please do that for me and so many of us who can only dream of having a pride in this part of the world.
Mm.
It's not yours alone. You're
You have
doing
my
it for so
promise.
many of us. You're doing it for so many of us who don't have that liberty. For that person in Afghanistan who's struggling to find themselves or find community or make peace. For that person, for me, it's that element. We should remember queer folk in Gaza, and they are also part of this. We should remember queer folk in Ukraine. We should remember queer folk in Afghanistan, or queer folk in Saudi Arabia, countries that I would say are a lot more restrictive than Kenya.
Mm.
Queer folk who in Chad, or places that they can't find self-expression, or even going onto the internet is done in secret to find themselves. This is for them. This is for them. We fly the flag for them. And here on the continent, because especially in Southern Africa, summer is closer towards November, December, January. So the Southern summer. They also have Pride festivities. And I think there's also that this Pride is also just us finding local context within which to fly our flag and celebrate each other. This is global Western Pride, but the Southern Hemisphere Pride will be a different month. It is still a protest. It is still a protest. It is still a celebration.
Hmm.
It's also remembrance for others who can't.
Yeah.
I think pride is for all of us, those in and out of the closet, those who can fly the flag, and for those who can't. Pride is a memory that we are not yet home free, man.
Hmm.
Not yet, but we're gonna celebrate what we have now.
Exactly. And, even in my country of birth, Tanzania, homosexuality is criminal still. And it makes me wonder what life could have been like if we didn't migrate to Canada. I wouldn't be able to live the life that I'm living now. And I don't take that for granted. I don't. What is your hope for the queer community in Kenya?
That we'll be able to celebrate pride freely one day. There'll be Pride Nairobi, Pride Mombasa, Pride Kisumu, Pride Moyale, Pride, that we will be accorded the same rights without discrimination like any other Kenyan. That we will be, and that's all rights, all rights.
Mm-hmm.
That in us finding ourselves, that maybe we will help Kenya and East Africa, other East Africans also find themselves. Because I know we struggle with national identity, but in us accepting ourselves, other people will be able to say, let us have a conversation about who we are as a country and what does it mean to be Kenyan.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that in finding ourselves, I hope other people will also find home in themselves.
And you will continue to lead the way. I have no doubt. I think one of the biggest messages that I've heard today as a source of inspiration is that no one can take away your queer joy and that there is queer joy. And I really appreciate that. So I hope that people that are listening to that will hold on to that and find their queer joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so, so much.
The pleasure is mine, my dear new friend Kevin in Kenya. I could talk to you for hours. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. Please come back and talk to me again. It would be such an honor to have more, you know, conversation to learn about you, your work. I'm sure as you continue your activism, there'll be more to talk about. And as I continue to follow you and listen to you on your podcast, on your social media, your stories that you write, I will continue to admire all of your work. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you. I'm in such awe of you. I have incredible respect and admiration for you. I've been incredibly touched by everything that you said, and I'm truly grateful. Thank you so much.
Farhan, yeah, I don't take it for granted that our paths cross, mate, to be honest. I don't know, I'm feeling emotional, but thank you also.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for what you have given me and giving other people just by being you as well and for showing up. Thank you so much for that.
You're very
Let's just
welcome.
keep on showing up, man.
That's
And
just
this was
it.
just for me, it's like, yeah, the universe just sort of like, yeah, I think this was just bigger than ourselves,
I
much bigger than ourselves. And I'm so grateful that we
absolutely.
both showed up.
Yeah, and wherever you go, wherever I go, I pray that our paths physically cross again soon. That is my prayer.
Thank you so much. Same here. Thank you so, so much.
No. I'm Farhan Dalla. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode of Elevate Your Life, a transformational podcast. I hope today's conversation has elevated you in some way and inspired you to connect, move, and meditate. I'd really appreciate your support by following and rating this podcast. Come back soon and join me for another transformative conversation.